At my sister's wedding reception, I walked in wearing a black suit. The bride gasped, "That's what Mom wore to her funeral." I smiled. Yes, she gave it to me. But during the ceremony, a letter was delivered to the altar and my sister turned white reading it. I'm not the type to throw my business out on the internet, but after what happened at my sister's wedding, I don't know, it's like it's all too much to keep inside. My name's Caleb Hart. I'm 42 years old, been a mechanic most of my life. Born and raised in Ashland, Oregon, which ain't much of a town if you don't like Shakespeare festivals or retired Californians. I've been divorced for about 6 years now. No kids. Just me, a garage full of half-finished projects, and a cat named Leroy that only comes home when it's cold or he's hungry. My sister, Brielle, she's the golden child. Always was. Mom's favorite, though she'd never say it out loud. Brielle's 28, lives up in Portland now. Works some corporate gig, drives a fancy car, dates guys who wear watches that cost more than my truck. But we're close. As close as siblings could be after life chipped away at the family piece by piece. When the wedding invite came in the mail, white cardstock, all elegant and SHT, I just stared at it for a long time. She was marrying this guy named Trevor Hensley. Met him at some work event, fell in love, moved in together, and 6 months later, here we were. I won't lie to you, I never liked Trevor much. Always felt like he was trying too hard. Too many smiles, too many handshakes. Like he was selling me something and didn't even know what. But it wasn't my life. It was Brielle's. And after everything she's been through, if this guy made her happy, who was I to argue? The wedding was at the Oregon Garden Resort in Silverton. Place looked like a damn movie set. White chairs lined up on the grass, flowers everywhere, people buzzing around with cameras and little earpieces like they were coordinating a military operation. I was late. Of course I was. My old truck overheated halfway there, and I had to pull over and top off the radiator with a jug of water I found rolling around in the back. By the time I parked and stumbled out, I was sweating through my shirt and feeling about as out of place as a stray dog at a tea party. And I was wearing a black suit. Not just any black suit, Mom's black suit. Yeah, you heard me right. Mom had it custom made for Dad's funeral back in the day. She wore it again at every funeral after that until she passed. It hung in her closet for 2 years after she died, and when I was digging around for something to wear, I found it. Had it tailored a little. It fit like a glove. Something about it felt right. I didn't think much of it until I walked into the reception. Heads turned. People murmured. I caught a few curious glances, a couple judgmental ones. I didn't care. Weddings always made me itch. And then I saw Brielle. She was standing by the head table, glass of champagne halfway to her mouth, her white dress glittering under the fairy lights. She turned and saw me, and the color drained from her face. "That's what Mom wore to her funeral," she blurted out, voice cracking through the quiet. I shrugged, gave a small smile. Yeah, she gave it to me. For a second, I thought she might cry, or laugh, or scream. But she just stared at me, mouth twitching, eyes glassy. Trevor leaned over, whispering something in her ear, and she shook her head sharply, like snapping out of a daze. The music swelled, the noise picked back up, and I drifted over to the bar. The bartender, a skinny kid with a bad haircut, raised his eyebrows at me. "Whiskey? Make it a double," I muttered. The reception rolled on. Best man speech, maid of honor speech, all the usual crap. People dabbing their eyes, fake laughing at bad jokes. I stood in the back, sipping my drink, trying not to think about how empty the whole thing felt. And that's when it happened. A server, girl couldn't have been more than 19, nervous as Hill, walked straight up to Brielle. Handed her a plain white envelope. I watched from the shadows, something sour curling in my gut. Brielle opened it. And just like that, the color drained from her face again. Only this time it was worse. Her hands shook. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Trevor leaned over. "Bri? You okay?" She didn't even look at him. Just stared at the paper like it was a BMB about to go off. I pushed away from the wall, heart pounding. "Brielle?" I called out. She blinked, shoved the letter into her bouquet like she could hide it there, and smiled, a smile so fake it made my skin crawl. "Nothing," she said. "It's nothing. Let's just keep going." But the energy in the room shifted. You could feel it. The tension, thick enough to choke on. Later that night, after most of the guests had left and the dance floor was empty except for a few drunk stragglers, I found her outside. She was sitting on a stone bench by the fountain, barefoot, her dress bunched up around her knees. She didn't look up when I sat down beside her. "You gonna tell me what was in that letter?" I asked. She sniffled, wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Not here. Not tonight." "Then when?" She stared out at the fountain, the water catching the moonlight. "Tomorrow. Mom's house." I froze a little. We hadn't set foot in that house since the funeral. It was like sacred ground, too many memories, too much hurt. But I nodded. Okay. The next day, I pulled up in front of the house. The place looked like hill. Paint peeling, weeds knee-high, shutters hanging by one hinge. Like the world had moved on and left it behind. Brielle was already there, sitting on the porch steps, arms wrapped around herself. She stood up when she saw me, walked down the steps, and without saying a word, handed me the letter. I took it, heart thudding. The handwriting hit me like a punch to the gut. Mom's handwriting. I opened it carefully, the paper crackling under my fingers. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. There's something you need to know. Something I couldn't carry to the grave without telling you. Your father, the man who raised you, he's not your biological father, Brielle. Your real father is Paul Hensley, Trevor's father. I'm sorry. I was young. I was scared. I thought it would be better this way. But you deserve the truth." I read it again and again, like somehow the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. But they didn't. Trevor's father. Paul Hensley. Brielle's real father. I looked up at her, and her face said it all. "She let me marry him," she whispered. She knew. And she let me marry him. "Brie, you didn't know. You're not blood related." It's not like," she shoved me away, tears streaming down her face. "It's sick, Caleb. It's wrong. She should have told me." I sat down hard on the porch, feeling like the air had been SCK'd out of my lungs. "What do you want to do?" I asked. She hugged herself tighter, like she was trying to hold herself together. "I don't know." We spent the whole day sitting in that old house. Talking, crying, remembering. And somewhere in the middle of it, we realized the house wasn't just walls and floors. It was us. It was every argument, every Christmas morning, every scraped knee and whispered secret. It was home, even if it hurt to be there. By evening, Brielle wiped her face, stood up, and said, "I need to talk to Trevor. I need to know if he knew." I drove her back to Portland. Neither of us said a word on the way. When we got to Trevor's apartment, he was sprawled on the couch, TV blaring. He jumped up when he saw her. "Brie? What's going on? You disappeared last night." She held up the letter. "Read it." He took it, frowning, and read. Slowly, his mouth moved silently, eyes scanning the words. When he finished, he looked at her like he didn't recognize her. "Brielle, I swear to God I didn't know." "Did your dad know?" she asked, voice low and dangerous. Trevor opened and closed his mouth, shaking his head. "No. No way. He would have told me. He would have said something." Brielle stared at him for a long time. "I can't," she said finally. "I can't be with you. Not after this." Trevor stepped forward, desperation all over him. "We're not blood, Brielle. We're not brother and sister. We're not even technically family. This doesn't have to change anything." "It changes everything," she said, voice cracking. "It changes who I am." He begged. He cried. He swore up and down that they could get past it. But Brielle just kept shaking her head. And finally, she walked out the door. And I followed her. To be continued. We didn't talk much on the drive back to Ashland. The radio buzzed with static most of the way. Brielle stared out the window, face blank, like she'd drained herself dry. I kept glancing over at her, wanting to say something, anything, but every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. When we finally pulled into Mom's old driveway, the porch light flickered like it always did when the wind picked up. Brielle just sat there, hands limp in her lap. "You coming in?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Just opened the door, got out, and disappeared into the house. I sat there for a minute, listening to the engine ticking as it cooled. Then I followed her inside. The house smelled like dust and old wood. Like memories you couldn't wash out no matter how many windows you opened. Brielle was in the living room, standing in front of the fireplace. She was holding a photo of Mom, one of those stiff studio portraits where Mom's trying not to smile too much, back when people still dressed up for photos. "She kept this from me," Brielle said, voice low and tight. "My whole life, Caleb." She lied. She thought she was protecting you, I said, even though the words felt hollow. Brielle laughed, this sharp, broken sound that made my chest ache. Protecting me? She let me fall in love with the son of my real father, Caleb. She let me plan a future with him. Marry him. How the hell is that protecting me? I didn't have an answer. Not one she wanted to hear. Instead, I sank onto the old couch, springs creaking under my weight. She wasn't perfect, I said finally. She messed up. Big time. But she loved you. You know that. Brielle hugged the photo to her chest, rocking slightly. Love's not supposed to feel like this, she whispered. The next morning, I found her curled up on the couch, still in her wedding dress, crumpled and stained, hair tangled around her face. I covered her with an old quilt and went to make coffee. The kitchen was barely functional. Dust on the counters, a few cans of soup in the pantry, a spider building a web in the corner by the fridge. It felt wrong, being back. Like waking up in a life you thought you'd outgrown. The coffee tasted like burnt socks, but it was hot. Brielle stirred when I set a mug down next to her. Thanks, she mumbled, sitting up and wincing. I sat across from her, letting the silence stretch. What now? I asked eventually. She wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into the black liquid like it held the answers. I don't know. She looked so small, so lost. I can't go back to Portland, she said. I can't see him. I can't face any of them. Then stay here, I said before I could think better of it. For a while. Get your head straight. Brielle looked around the dusty room, the sagging furniture, the cracked windows. Here. Yeah, I shrugged. It's still home. Sorta. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. We spent the next few days cleaning the place up. It was slow work, moving Mom's old things, scrubbing floors, throwing out moldy junk from the fridge. Leroy the cat came sniffing around on the second day, meowing indignantly at the mess. Brielle found old photo albums in the attic, dusty, brittle things. We sat on the floor flipping through them, laughing at Dad's awful sideburns and Mom's 80s perms. For a little while, it almost felt normal. Almost. But at night, when the house got too quiet and the wind rattled the windows, I could hear her crying. She tried to hide it. She'd bury her face in the pillow or go sit on the porch. But I heard. I didn't call her out on it. Some things you just had to let bleed out. Then, about a week after the wedding that wasn't, there was a knock at the door. I was in the garage, elbow deep in an old Chevy, when I heard it. Wiped my hands on a rag and went to answer. It was Trevor. He looked rough. Dark circles under his eyes, beard starting to grow and patchy. Hey, Caleb, he said, voice hoarse. I didn't move. What do you want? I asked, not unkindly but not exactly welcoming either. He shifted on his feet, hands jammed into his pockets. I need to talk to Brielle. Please. I glanced over my shoulder. She was standing at the end of the hallway, barefoot, wearing one of Mom's old sweaters. Her face was unreadable. Let him in, she said finally. I stepped aside. Trevor walked in, twisting his wedding ring around his finger. Bri, I'm not giving up on us, he said. I love you. I don't care about biology or bloodlines or any of that. You're you. That's all I care about. Brielle hugged herself tighter. I care, she said. I care about what it means. About what she did. About what I didn't know. I need time. Trevor's face crumpled a little. How much time? He asked, voice cracking. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe forever. Trevor flinched like she'd slapped him. He nodded slowly. Okay, he said. I'll wait. As long as it takes. Brielle turned away, biting her lip so hard it went white. Trevor stood there a second longer, like he was hoping she'd change her mind. Then he left. I closed the door behind him, leaning my forehead against the wood. Jesus, I muttered. Brielle sniffled. I'm not sure I'll ever be okay, she said quietly. You will, I said. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But you will. She didn't answer. But for the first time since that damn wedding, she looked like she almost believed me. Story continues. The days slipped by after that. Brielle barely left the house. I didn't push her. Some wounds you couldn't rush. She spent her mornings curled up in Mom's old recliner with a book she never really read, and her nights out on the porch, staring up at the stars like they held some answer she was too scared to ask for. I kept busy fixing up the place. Fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen. Replaced the broken steps out back. It gave me something to do, kept my hands moving when my mind wanted to sit and stew. One afternoon, while I was patching a hole in the roof, I heard her call out, "Caleb?" I climbed down the ladder, wiping sweat from my forehead. "What's up?" She was standing by the mailbox, holding a thick envelope in her hands. Her face was pale again, the way it had been when she got that first letter. "It's from Trevor's parents," she said. I took the envelope from her. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting, sharp, perfect letters, too neat to be casual. "You gonna open it?" I asked. She nodded slowly. We sat on the porch steps together. She peeled the envelope open like it might bite her. Inside was a letter and a photograph. She read the letter first, lips moving silently. Then she handed it to me without a word. "Brielle, we are devastated by what you've learned and by the pain it's caused you. We had no idea about the relationship between your mother and Paul. He kept that part of his life hidden from everyone, even us. We understand if you never want to see us again. But please know, you are not defined by the mistakes of the past. You are not your parents' choices. You are your own person. And we love you like our own daughter. If you ever want to talk, our door is open. Always, Margaret and Paul Hensley." I lowered the letter and looked at Brielle. She was staring at the photograph. It was a picture of her and Trevor, laughing together at some family barbecue. She must have been 20, maybe younger. Trevor had his arm around her, both of them sunburned and happy. Tears slipped down her cheeks silently. "They didn't know," she said softly. "They didn't know either." I put my hand on her back, feeling how tense she was. "That doesn't mean you have to forgive them," I said. "Or go running back." She shook her head. "I don't hate them. I don't even hate Trevor. I need space. I need to figure out who I am without all the lies." I nodded. "You got time, kiddo. All the time you need." The next few days were harder. Brielle started having nightmares. I'd hear her crying out in the middle of the night, sometimes calling for Mom, sometimes just sobbing broken sounds into the dark. One night, I found her sitting on the kitchen floor, knees pulled up to her chest, shaking. I sat down beside her, not saying anything. After a while, she spoke. "I keep thinking about the what-ifs," she whispered. "What if I never found out? What if Mom had just told me when I was younger? What if Trevor and I," she trailed off, shuddering. "Can't live in the what-ifs," I said. "They'll eat you alive." She looked at me, eyes red and raw. "I don't even know who I am anymore, Caleb." "You're Brielle Hart," I said firmly. "My stubborn, brilliant pain-in-the-ass little sister. That's who you are." A small, broken laugh escaped her. "You always make it sound so simple." I shrugged. "Simple don't mean easy." That weekend, we drove out to the coast. I figured she needed air, space, something bigger than the mess we were swimming in. We ended up at Gold Beach, a 3-hour drive from Ashland. The sea was wild, gray waves crashing against the rocks, wind whipping our hair into our faces. We walked along the shore in silence, the cold biting through our jackets. After a long while, Brielle spoke. "Do you think she loved me?" I stopped walking. "Mom?" She nodded, looking out at the water. "Of course she did," I said. "She just loved you in a way that got all twisted up in fear and guilt. Doesn't mean it wasn't real." Brielle kicked at a piece of driftwood. "Doesn't feel real." "Feelings lie," I said. "You know what's real? The way she stayed up with you all night when you had chickenpox. The way she drove 4 hours to bring you the science fair project you forgot. The way she cried at your high school graduation so hard Dad had to give her his whole damn handkerchief." Brielle smiled through her tears. "I remember that. She was human," I said. "Humans screw up. Big time. But love sticks. Even when everything else falls apart." We sat on the sand until the sun dipped low and the sky turned pink and gold. And for the first time in a long time, Brielle looked peaceful. Not healed, not whole, but peaceful. Like maybe she was starting to believe she could be okay someday. When we got back to Ashland, there was another letter waiting. This time, it was addressed to me. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Sloppy. Almost angry. I opened it on the porch while Brielle carried our bags inside. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Stay away from Trevor. Stay away from our family. You're poison. You ruined everything. If you don't, we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what your sister is." No signature. No return address. Just rage on paper. I crumpled it up, heart pounding. Brielle came back out, saw my face. "What is it?" she asked. I forced a smile. Nothing important. But I slipped the paper into my pocket, feeling the weight of it settle deep in my gut. Something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't tell Brielle about the letter right away. I tucked it into the drawer next to the kitchen sink under a stack of old junk mail. Out of sight, out of mind. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But it gnawed at me. Someone wasn't ready to let things go. Someone was pissed that Brielle walked away instead of pretending everything was fine. And I had a pretty good idea who it was. 2 days later, Brielle decided to go into town. She needed groceries. And maybe, I think, she just needed to feel normal for a little while. We went together, just like old times. Stopped at the Safeway on Main Street, picked up a cart, wandered the aisles while she debated over oat milk and cereal brands. Everything was fine until we got to the checkout. People stared. Not the casual, hey, there's a familiar face kind of stare. The sharp, whispering behindhands kind. An old lady bumped into me on purpose, muttering under her breath. Disgusting. Brielle froze, carton of eggs in her hands. What the hell? She whispered. I turned slowly, heart thudding. 2 women, standing by the magazine rack, were whispering loudly enough for us to hear. Married her half-brother, can you believe it? She knew. They're just pretending now. Trash, the both of them. Brielle's face turned crimson. She dropped the eggs back into the cart with a clatter. Let's go, she mumbled. We ditched the cart and walked out without buying anything. She didn't say a word until we got to the truck. Then she turned to me, voice shaking. What's happening, Caleb? I sighed. They're talking, I said. Somebody's stirring the pot. She stared at me. You knew. I rubbed the back of my neck. There was a letter. After we got back from the coast. Threatened us to stay away from Trevor. Guess they made good on it. Brielle slumped back against the seat, tears brimming. Why can't they just leave me alone? I tightened my hands on the steering wheel. They don't get to win, Bri. They don't get to tear you down because they can't handle their own guilt. That night, I sat on the porch long after Brielle went to bed. Thinking, stewing, plotting. Because yeah, I'm a mechanic and maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to emotions. But if there's one thing I know how to do, it's fix what's broken. And these people? They needed to be taught a lesson. The right way, without stooping to their level. First thing I did was call an old buddy, Hank Lawson. Hank's a tech guy. Runs a little computer repair shop in town. Used to hack into school servers back in the day for fun. I told him what was going on. He laughed. You want dirt on the Hensleys? He said. Give me 2 days. Sure enough, 2 days later, Hank handed me a flash drive. You didn't get this from me, he said, winking. I plugged it into my laptop and sat back. Emails, photos, financial records. Turns out, Paul Hensley, Trevor's dad, wasn't quite the pillar of the community he pretended to be. Tax evasion. Some shady land deals. A lawsuit he paid off quietly a few years back to shut up a contractor he stiffed. All tucked neatly away. And guess what? Margaret Hensley's charity, the one she bragged about at every cocktail party, was basically funneling money back into her own pocket. Not enough to get them arrested, but enough to ruin their precious reputations. I sat there for a long time, thinking about what to do. Could have gone nuclear. Sent everything to the police, the newspapers, plastered it all over town. But that wasn't what Brielle needed. She didn't need more pain. She needed them humiliated. Quietly. Perfectly. I made a few copies of the files. Printed out the best ones, the ones with the biggest impact, and tucked them into plain white envelopes. One for the local newspaper editor. One for the Ashland Rotary Club president. One for the head of the town council. Anonymous delivery. No fingerprints. No trail. The fallout was glorious. Within a week, whispers turned into full-blown scandal. Paul Hensley resigned from the Rotary Club to focus on personal matters. Margaret's charity suddenly shut down for restructuring. They went from hosting garden parties to hiding behind drawn curtains, all while trying to pretend everything was fine. And just like that, the town's attention shifted. Nobody cared about Brielle anymore. They were too busy savoring the downfall of 2 of Ashland's so-called finest citizens. One afternoon, a few weeks later, I found Brielle sitting on the porch swing, watching the sunset. She looked lighter. Still scarred, but lighter. She glanced at me as I stepped outside. Did you have anything to do with it? She asked casually. I shrugged, sitting beside her. Define anything. She smiled. A real one this time. The first real smile I'd seen in a long time. Thank you, she said. We swung in silence for a while, the chains creaking gently. Finally, she leaned her head against my shoulder. I'm gonna be okay, she said softly. I know you are. And sitting there, with the sun dipping low and the town buzzing with a scandal that wasn't ours anymore, I finally believed it too.